In my last video, I showed a better way to create hover interactions in Webflow, and today I'm introducing an all-new state manager. This is for styling children inside active slides, open menu buttons, and so much more. These are two separate systems so that they can work together. We can trigger one interaction on hover of a button and another whenever the button's open or active or something like that. These two systems work together to remove the majority of CSS that we'd write in Webflow, and the hover interaction system got quite a few upgrades as well, so we'll cover those in this video. So to create a simple hover interaction like this, we can either use CSS or Webflow Interactions /JS. Now with Webflow Interactions or JavaScript, it usually only applies to the elements that were there on page load. So if we add any new elements with filtering or sort of modals or different things like that, those new elements wouldn't have the interaction automatically like they would with CSS. Also, CSS is usually lighter on the browser and easier to override on devices that don't support hover or prefers reduced motion or any different media query we'd like. So generally for simple hovers, it's almost always preferred to use CSS when possible. Now when we do this, we have to write some CSS using our class names. So when we hover the button, find the arrow inside and change its background color to purple. Now here, if we rename our class or we rename our variable, our custom code breaks. So let's delete our embed and make this native. We'll head to our variable panel and create a collection called trigger. And inside that, we'll create a number variable called on, set to 1 by default. And then we'll create another number variable called off, set to 0. We'll create a new mode called active. And when active, we'll switch on to 0 and off to 1. Now from this, we'll be able to create all our hover interactions natively. So we'll head to this button, for instance, and if we were to switch its opacity to being off by default, then we could say whenever we hover this parent, we'll go ahead and change the mode to being active. So that way when we hover the parent, the arrow is fading up. Now in this case, we're not doing opacity, we're doing transform. So we'll apply a transform and we'll do rotate. And in this case, we want to add a calc in here. We'll say 45 degrees times 1. And we'll go ahead and switch that 1 to being off or on. So in this case, we want the rotate to be off by default. And when we hover, the rotate will be on. Now we can do the same for color. So if I head to this background color here, I'll switch it over to color mix. And usually color mix is good for mixing two colors. So I might want 60% of black and 40% of white mixed together to create a new color. Now in this case, we want this to be gray by default. And on hover, we want to change it to purple. So we want 100% of gray and 0% of purple. Now to do this, we're going to go ahead and add our calc and we'll say 100% times on so that this color is on by default. And then we'll go ahead and switch this calc here to being 100% times off. So this color is off by default. And that way, whenever we hover this, we'll notice that we're changing the background color. Now we can do the same thing for the font color of this. We'll head to color here, go color mix and paste this in. And we'll set the font color to being dark by default. And on hover, it changes to white. And so that the font color changes as well. Now, if we need to make any edits, we can make it from the style panel instead of having to find where the custom code was and which value we were rotating this to. And also we can rename our classes and variables freely without any code breaking. Now, sometimes we might not want elements to be completely on or off. So we can do things like opacity. We'll go ahead and add a calc and we'll make the opacity be 1 and we'll say minus something like 0.6 and then we'll say times 1. So when we do that here, we'll switch this 1 to being on by default. And so what that's doing is it's taking 1 minus 0.6. So the opacity is going to be 0.4. And this on gets multiplied by the 0.6. So when it's on, this will be 1 minus 0.6. When it's off, this will be 1 minus 0. So it'll just be full opacity. So when we do that here, we're able to just have very specific amounts. Now, in this case, I'm leaving this lower opacity on by default. And then when I go ahead and hover this entire card, and I go ahead and switch its mode over here to active, now it's going to hover the paragraph. Now notice how it's also triggering the button hover. Since this is just a variable, those hovers are inherited here on the button. Now, if we don't want that, we can go to the button and switch its default mode to being base, so it no longer receives its state from the parent. And that way, when we hover the parent, it doesn't affect the child. We have to hover that child separately. But in most cases, for hover interactions specifically, we'll want them to inherit from their parent trigger. Now let's set this opacity of the content to off so it's revealed on hover. And the problem with Webflow Hover is it also runs on touch devices. So when the user taps the link, it'll flash briefly to the hovered state before switching them to the next page, which can feel like a bug. So we'll remove this native Webflow Hover from the card and also from the button, and we'll add a little bit of CSS instead that makes this more powerful and reusable. So here anytime we have an attribute of data trigger with a value of hover, it's going to switch that element to the active state only on devices that support hover. On devices that do not support hover, we can make an element in the active state by default by including a value of mobile. We can also make it trigger the active state whenever we focus on an element. Now, I've switched this over to focus visible since this only runs when we actually tab onto that element. I had issues with focus within. When I would click on a button, it would trigger the active state when we don't actually want that. So focus visible works better here. And we can also preview some content by default by adding that value. So to see them in action, we'll head to the card. Under attributes, we'll give it a data trigger. And we can make it trigger on hover. We can also make it trigger whenever we tab onto this card or any of its children. And we can include these keywords in any order. And we can also preview this. So it'll switch the entire card into the active state, but on our live site, the card will not be in that state by default. This just makes it easy to edit the content. Now we don't want this button in the active state here, so I'll remove preview off of that, and I'll just add it onto this actual content element. So I'll add the data trigger with the value preview, and that way I can edit this text, but as soon as we go into this preview mode or we go to the publish site, the text will be hidden. Now, we might also want this text to be revealed on touch devices by default, so that's where we would add that keyword mobile, and that way this element and all of its children will be in the active state for any touch devices. So let's combine this with our state manager. I'll head to variables and create a new collection called state, and in that we'll have a number variable called true set to 1, and then we'll have a number variable called false set to 0, and we'll create a new mode called active where we switch true over to 0 and false over to 1. And then we'll head over to our embed and we'll paste our completed code for all of our data state and data triggers. Now with the data state elements, they're set to the inactive state by default, so they don't inherit from their parent, unlike the data triggers, because we wouldn't want a checkbox to look checked just because it's inside of an active slide or anything like that. So we're making sure these data state elements don't inherit from the parent. Anything with an isActive class will be in the active state by default. That's active slides, active tab links. Anything with a data state checked will allow us to listen for checked checkboxes or radios inside. Anything with a data current will allow us to listen for if a nav link is current, or if it has a child, maybe we apply this attribute to a div and the child link inside is current. So these work either way, whether we apply it directly to the link or the link is a child inside of this attribute. And we can listen for data state open for things like the open Webflow menu button. We can have data state expanded for anything with ARIA expanded attributes. External will listen for any links that open in a new tab and allow us to style those children. So this is the CSS that I was using by default in Lumos, but you might need to add other states depending on what you want to track in your project. And this list will probably expand over time. So now that we have that set, let's save this and we'll head to the link. The link is in the current state here. It's pointed to the current page. So we'll give it an attribute of data state, and the value is going to be current. I'll apply that same attribute to each of these links so that once we're on the current page for that link, we'll be able to style the children. I only want this dot to show up inside of the current link. So for its width here, we'll do a calc and we'll say 0.4 rem. We'll say times, we'll make that false. So this width is turned off by default and it's on whenever we're inside a current link. We want to do the same thing for the margin. So a calc of 0.4 rem times false, and that'll make it off by default and only on for that current link. Now we'll also want to combine some hovers to this, and we can actually make it when we hover a link where we gray out the siblings, and that's with this data trigger group and data trigger hover other or focus other. So we can make this trigger on both hover and focus. So this allows us to create some complex interactions that would normally require a lot of custom CSS. So we can give this parent div that holds all of our links a data, we'll call it trigger group. And then we can give each of the links, define how we want to trigger these links. So I'll do data trigger whenever I focus on another link, and I'll also do hover other. So if we only wanted this to trigger on hover, we could remove the focus. And then I'll just repeat that across each of these. Normally these links would be components to speed up this process, but for now we'll do data trigger, and then we'll apply that here. So then we can choose which elements we want to fade. I don't want to fade the whole link, including these dots. I only want to animate the text. So on this text element here, I'll go ahead and apply a transition to opacity while we're at it. And let's go ahead and set the opacity here. Let's do a calc. We'll do 1 minus 0.8 times 1. And then for that 1, we can do true or false if we're trying to make this based off a state, or we can do on or off if we're trying to make this based off a trigger. So we're going to do off here. So that opacity is off by default. And then whenever I hover an element, it's on for the siblings. And I can also tab onto an element, and again, it's going to gray out the siblings. Now, this opacity is a little too faded. We'd want to use a stronger one, but that's how we can add those triggers to both the states and both the hovers. Here's just a couple use cases for the state manager. So here we have this open Webflow nav button, and whenever it's open, we want to push the lines down and rotate them. So we have this data state attribute with a value of open, so we can affect the children inside. Now, how far we push those lines down depends on the thickness of the line and the gap between them to make a perfect X. So previously we'd had to write CSS like this, where we use a nav thickness and a hamburger gap variable as well. And if we were to rename our variable or our class names, this custom code would break. But now we can do this completely natively. So here on this line element here, we can just add the transform we want using the thickness and the gap variables. And if we want to affect even the rotate whenever the line's open, we can do all that from the style panel without having to dig into custom code. Now, the state manager is also hugely helpful for dealing with complex selectors. So here I want this first tab link to look like it's active without the client having to manually add isActive class to whatever the first link is. Now, sometimes we'll have these links directly within the slot, but sometimes we'll have a collection wrapper in the slot and the links will be inside each of the CMS items. So we need to support multiple structures. Now we have this line inside here that I'm turning up the opacity on. I could be changing its background color on active or anything else. And the beauty of this is the actual active styles are saved on the elements themselves. They're not saved in any custom CSS we write. So in our embed here, inside of design mode, inside the slot, I'll grab the first item as long as it's not a collection wrapper. And then if it is a collection wrapper, then I'll find the list inside that, then the first CMS item, and then inside that CMS item, I'll find the component and switch it to the active state. And this will handle all children and anything else. Now with normal CSS, we'd had to do something like change the color over to black for those active links. And then if we want to style the color of the line div inside, we'd have to find the line div inside each of these elements. And now we're repeating this complex selector in lots of different places just to be able to change something here. And the background color that we set on this line here isn't the same background color that's used on the isActive state. So that would be completely out of sync. But with the state manager, we're just changing variables to turn the active state on or off. And the value of those is saved on the classes in Webflow. So this little bit of code we wrote here can affect any future children we might add inside of these active links. So we're able to more easily manage complex selectors and reuse those states in multiple different ways. One of the questions I got quite a few times was how to change the rotation on things like accordion icons here. So normally we'd had to dig into the custom code, find that line of GSAP and change the rotation amount. So if we want it to change from an arrow to an X, now we need our rotation degree to be something like -45 degrees. And that wasn't always the easiest for someone not familiar with code to find. But by keeping this all in the style panel, it opens up all new possibilities, being able to switch it from things like component variants or any other state we might want. And I just have a CSS transition on here, but we can easily animate these states with GSAP as well. So here on this element, I'm animating the true variable from 1 to 0. I'm animating the false variable from 0 to 1, and we can have any kind of duration or easing. So we could apply this to the entire component or to individual elements within a component. If we want each element to have its own duration, we could scrub this on scroll or anything else we can do with GSAP while still leaving the actual values completely editable inside of Webflow. So that's an overview of the new trigger and state system I've designed for Webflow. I'm excited to see what this will enable you to create.